Hey, Randy Joe here, and this is 1000 Reviews, the series where I plan on reviewing every single album from the 1000 Albums Listened to Before You Die book. And today we're looking at Michael Jackson's 1979 album, Off the Wall. Off the Wall by Michael Jackson was released underneath the Epic label, produced by Michael Jackson himself with Quincy Jones, with art direction from Steve Harvey and Mike Salisbury, nationality USA, and a running time of 45 minutes and 45 seconds. The double 4-5. When it comes to Off the Wall, there's a lot more that I tend to actually like from Michael Jackson this time around in comparison to his later records, and even though I have reviewed his other album Bad on this channel quite well, I actually would go as far to say that I like this one a lot more just for its overall consistency and its overall tone, and Michael Jackson's just sheer honesty on this one. Because typically with a lot of Michael Jackson's later work, such as Thriller and Bad, you have him putting on a more theatrical approach and more character-based sort of songs, and with Off the Wall, it feels like it is a much more honest record. It feels like it's coming straight from Michael Jackson himself, and there is no theatrics to get in the way of that. He's putting on a very honest portrayal of himself, and it doesn't feel as if there is any fabrication in between. And on top of that, this is probably Michael Jackson's most danceable and most grooviest record that I've heard so far. Especially with the opener, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, you have what is arguably Michael Jackson's most danceable song ever made. It's extremely electrifying and danceable with its upbeat and groovy aesthetic that carries on throughout its 6 minutes, laying in slightly off-kilter effects to create a very different and dynamic sort of sound over this 6 minutes. Yes, it maintains a single groove, but it feels as if it is constantly building and shifting within this groove. On top of that, Michael Jackson's vocals on Don't Stop Till You Get Enough really match the energy and tone of this track and continue to bring on this upbeat and continually danceable tone. It's such an amazing, iconic opener and is such an iconic song for Michael Jackson in general, and I think to open up this album with this track is just such a powerful move. Because the first track, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, and the last track are probably the most danceable songs on the album, really bookending this thing with just its overall pop, disco, and groovy aesthetic. You have Rock With You, which goes a more soulful approach, and his voice, especially on this one, definitely feels like it is a more soul-focused song rather than the groovy aesthetic that is so predominant on this album, feeling even more R&B-ish than anywhere else on this album typically, before jumping right back into the third track, Workin Day and Night, carrying on the exact same aesthetic and tone of Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. Because the structure of groove music in general tends to focus predominantly on one single groove for the entirety of the track, with only a bridge sort of breaking this up. And Workin Day and Night is a great prime example of that, and I think that a lot of the album here really feels like it is influential to a lot of artists, especially for someone like Talking Heads with Remain in Light, because with Working Day and Night, I felt like it has a lot of the same parallels with that album, which that album came out a year later. So the influence of this record to me was pretty clear right from the get-go on a first listen. The concept of a groove song and a groove record is just driven home so strongly throughout this album, and Workin Day and Night is a prime example of it. However, this album does manage to slow things down and go the further R&B element with songs like She's Out of My Life or even Girlfriend, which are a bit slower and are not as danceable in their delivery. She's Out of My Life especially being quite a slow song for MJ, and honestly, I welcome it because it breaks up the overpowering dance elements of the album to create a slight detour before diving right back into it with the song, especially at the end, Burn This Disco Out, which is, in my opinion, just a brilliant outro through and through. It is extremely strong from beginning to end, completely enveloping the idea of disco and dance and R&B and soul all into one track, and really just flatlining this entire album out with just its overall aesthetic kind of hitting a climactic approach at the end. I feel like it bookends this great dance record in such a powerful way and is honestly a fantastic closer of a track. Much of this album just feels so sincere and honest for MJ, while at the same time mixing in so many different genres. There's pop, R&B, soul, funk, dance especially, all really fused into one and feeling like the absolute pinnacle of many of these genres coming together. And there's so many great instrumental passages too. For example, on the song Get on the Floor, the bass line from the beginning, right from the start, really hooks you in and continues throughout and feels like such a great bass line to introduce. And it's simple things like this that are so subtle to the record, but I feel like adds so much depth to it. Like I said with songs like Don't Stop Till You Get Enough or even Working Day and Night, there's these slightly off-kilter tinging effects that are super aesthetically pleasing and quite subtle at the same time. They don't feel like they are on the forefront, but they're there enough to really draw you in, creating such a diverse soundscape for their individual tracks. So collectively, altogether, this album really does feel like an extremely polished and welcoming solo album for Michael Jackson, his biggest solo album at the time, and really you can tell why. It is such an influential album to so many artists going forward, especially within that field. Like I said, I feel like this album was influential on the Talking Heads, for example, and I think it's just a brilliant record through and through and feels like such a real and honest portrayal of Michael Jackson before he jumped into the much more theatrical approaches with things like Thriller and Bad. So with that all being said, the soft rating of this album came to a 9.2 out of 10, but I will harden that rating down to a 9 out of 10. It's not a perfect record, but it's damn well close to that. And with that all being said, it is an essential record in my opinion. This is worth a listen. It is a fantastic dance record and an essential Michael Jackson record for sure. All right, let's see what the next album we're listening to is in the 1001 Albums Listened To. Random number generator, generate number 398, which will be the album Vento di Moio by Elis Regina. I don't know the song, or I don't know the album, but it came out in 1985, so go ahead and give that a listen, and I'll review that in about 1 week from now. Anyways, that pretty much does it for this video. If you liked the video, please hit like and subscribe. If you want to follow along in listening to every album from the 1001 Albums Listened To Before You Die book. And as always, my name is Randy Joe, and I'm signing off.